Well, fast am I, good afternoon. Welcome along to Manx Radio's Mannin Line for a Monday. Alex sitting in for Andy today. Just one day only. Andy will be back tomorrow. Don't worry, all is well. Now, in terms of what should we talk about? Well, that Easyjet flight. Yes, a big company like Easyjet, not a problem. It wasn't too windy to land. But in the Isle of Man, Menzies couldn't get stairs that were safe enough to use to get people off the plane. We're going to hear from a passenger on that flight very shortly. Are we a bit too trigger happy with weather warnings now? There's always a warning or an advisory, and is it bad for business? And let's talk about how you sort out the civil service. All that and whatever you'd like to talk about this afternoon. We've got an open line through until 1 o'clock today. But there was one gentleman on that flight who I'm hopefully going to be joined on the line with now. And that was Gary, who put quite a scathing post on Facebook. Hello, Gary, you there?
Hi, Alex. Yes, I'm here, yeah.
So tell us then, what happened last night? You were on this flight to the Isle of Man with EasyJet, and by the look of your Facebook post, you weren't too happy with what basically came about, were you?
Not really, no. It was a bit of an ordeal, if I'm honest, Alex. It was EasyJet were fine, no problems there. The flight was on time. We landed, plenty of time. I think the Gatwick flight, the EasyJet Gatwick flight, came in about 20 minutes before, no problems. We landed. Next thing, 15, 20 minutes later, the captain said, "Oh, it's too windy for the stairs to come to the plane, so we're just going to wait for it to hopefully get a gap before they can come and sort it out." Another 20 minutes goes by. The captain updates us again, saying still no joy. He's asked whether or not he could park somewhere else where it's less windy. The airport reluctantly said no. And then about 20 minutes later, we all got the bad news on the plane that we were flying back to Liverpool. So unfortunately, over the last 5 or 10 years, it's been awful, to be honest. The amount of flights that have either been cancelled with either delays or air traffic control, totally nothing to do with the airlines, but all to do with, unfortunately, infrastructure on the Isle of Man, whether it's at the sea terminal or whether it's in the airport. It's disgusting, to be honest.
Now, are you a gentleman that travels quite often? Do you rely on these kind of routes? Because, I mean, what sort of disruption does the lack of faith in having reliability actually play on your life generally?
I mean, I travel maybe 5 or 6 times a year. Sometimes it's delayed. Sometimes I've had cancellations in the past. This one took the biscuit, if I'm honest. Never had to be flown back to where I've come from, and then obviously having to, I was one of the lucky ones because a family member lives quite close to Liverpool Airport, so I was actually able to contact him, and he gratefully accepted us in for the night. But of the other 180 people, I'm sure there's been a lot of disruption through having to rebook, book hotels. I understand EasyJet could only transfer till tomorrow, so there's a lot of people having to stay 2 more nights in Liverpool at their expense. Whether they get refunded or not, I don't know. Act of God and all that, I really don't know. But the Isle of Man government needs to take some responsibility. What I'm annoyed about, to be honest, Alex, is that there's been no recognition of failing transport links on and off the island. They really need to get a handle on it, get a full review of everything, because what it's doing, we're touting ourselves as an international business centre here on the Isle of Man, and we're not. How can we be an international business centre when our travel in and out of the Isle of Man is on a shoestring? To be blunt, there's no recognition from Mr. Cannon about this subject. There's been no review, and to be honest, it really needs looking at and addressing quickly, because I fear that EasyJet may well pull the plug on the Isle of Man in a not too distant future if this keeps happening. They're the ones that are going to be losing money out of all this. So as well as the passengers, obviously yesterday as well. So that's my feelings anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. And I mean, finally, do you feel that if they turn around and say, "Well, it's weather," as you say, it's act of God. There's nothing that we could do about that. How do you take that as an answer?
I don't, to be honest, because we live on an island in the middle of the Irish Sea. The weather's been the same for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. So what needs to happen is a full review of, yes, we live in a place where sometimes it is, and I understand if it's completely out of the question that flights it's unsafe, but the flight was safe to get in, land, take off. There was no worries about that. But to get some stairs to a plane, I mean, we were fine in Liverpool, no problems. Similar wind, no problems getting the stairs there. So what there needs to be a review of how I understand that there's regulations and things in place, and if it is above a certain threshold, then fine. But what needs to happen is it needs to look, if a plane is safe to land, then there should be a way to get those people off that plane. And that needs looking at, whether it's different types of stairs, whether it's a tunnel into the airport or whatever. If you can spend £100 million on a new sea terminal in Liverpool, but they can't actually get people off a plane in Ronaldsway because it's 2 miles an hour over the selected wind, is ridiculous.
Okay, Gary. Final one, and thank you for sharing your experiences with us. Are you actually back home now? Have you managed to make it back?
We have we managed to get, I think, one of the last 4 or 5 seats available on the early morning flight this morning. But we did that when we were at Ronaldsway yesterday afternoon, when we were waiting to find out what was happening. We just decided to do it, and then we're hoping that we potentially might get a refund for the flight that had to go back yesterday. But we'll see on that one.
Okay,
we don't know.
Okay, Gary. Well, I wish you all the best on that, and thank you very much for sharing your time with us this afternoon.
Thanks, Alex. All the best.
Cheers. All the best. So there was Gary Shilling, who was stuck on that flight yesterday. Do you agree with his opinion? That we've spent, the ballpark figure of around 100 million. We know we haven't got a confirmed amount on it yet. In terms of the ferry terminal in Liverpool, we spent hundreds of millions buying the steam packet. We've paying off debts. We've bought the Manxman for 80 million. We're going to need another replacement for the Mannin very soon, which will be tens of millions. And yet we can't get a set of stairs to an aircraft that landed safely. Okay, we have contacted the airport for comment. Menzies are the contractor, of course, that deal with the ground staff. We've contacted them. Nothing from Menzies. Maybe it's a case of that actually that contractor isn't up to the business, and there are other contractors out there in terms of offering ground services. I don't know. I'd be interested in your opinion on 66 13 68 or texting 166 177. Andrea says, I take it that person that made the decision regarding the stairs was the interim airport director. How many times have flights been unable to get off a plane due to high winds? Well, Andrea, as I said, actually, at risk of sounding like I'm standing up for the interim airport director, the ground services are handled by Menzies, which is a separate contractor company. So I would imagine that decision lies with them. Alex, if you think of the situation with the planes is bad, how about the farce with the steam packet? Oh, here we go. An 80 million pound ship that can't sail in more than a stiff breeze. Once again, Francis, I feel I need to defend the steam packet here. The Manxman goes back and forth, back and forth. Okay, it fits into exactly the same category as everyone whinged on the Mannin Line about the Ben McCree, which is now seen as the saviour. So, in fairness, I think the Manxman's stats speak for themselves a little more as time's gone on. But what else have we got here? And thank you to the texter 376 who says, I like these weather warnings. They give us something to look forward to. Well, I suppose that's something, isn't it? Right. I'm going to try and get to the phone lines. We did have David on one, but I can't grab his call. It's still locked. So I will get back to David. Oh, there he is. I've got him. Mr. Quirk. Hello, how are you? Oh, David, come to me. Speak to me, Mr. Quirk. Are you there? No, I've lost David Quirk. So, hey-ho. David, we will try and get back to you. I'm definitely not ignoring you, David, so sorry about that. Let's get back to the text, shall we? What have we got here? Gaz, will the proposed wind turbines work if we have the wrong sort of wind to use stairs? Oh, this is like having leaves on the line, isn't it? I'm pretty sure whether you are in favour or not in favour of wind turbines, I'm pretty sure that wind blows them round. Thank you to the texter of 037, which says one more nail in the coffin of the Isle of Man. And also to the texter 762, I'll read your message when it comes up because Microsoft is on a go slow. This is good, this. I haven't got phones that are working, and guess what? I can't read a text message either. Let's go to WhatsApp and see what you're saying. This is going to be one of those days, isn't it? Alex, the responsibility for steps provision is the airlines, which they contract out to the handling agent. It's not the airport's responsibility on this occasion, says Paul in Castletown. Well, that's interesting. Which way round does that go then? If it's Easyjet and they are having trouble and manage to land the plane safely, surely the policy of, a plane can land in up to this wind, being able to get off it in whatever level wind should match that, I'm sure. Oh, crikey, we're getting personal now. 762. Maybe Gary should get his refund out of the DOI minister's vast salary. I'm pretty sure that's a little harsh on that one, but thank you very much. I'm going to try and talk to David Quirk again. Let's see if it works. David, are you there?
Alex Brindley, are you there? Over.
Oh, yes, excellent. Lovely to speak to you, David. How are you?
It is, and I really want to thank you, because I don't know many of the guys that work for Groudle Railway, but I want to thank you and the Railways group that's there for doing the Christmas run, because my granddaughter was there at the weekend, and she really enjoyed meeting Father Christmas. I don't know whether it was you or not.
It's the real Santa, David, of course. I don't do that. I run the railway bit. It's the real Santa that's there.
She got a present as well. So that was really great, and it just shows you what you can do on the Isle of Man when you try. Well, listen, I was trying to get on with the Chief Minister on Friday, but I couldn't, obviously. But I wanted to thank all the local charities, and also thank Manx Radio and Kell Properties in particular, because Kell Properties, the series they're doing at the minute, getting involved and doing some PR work for each of the charities on the Isle, local charities, that's a real bonus for us on the island. That I'm involved in a couple of charities as well. We've not been done yet, but there's probably still time. But,
there's a list. I can assure you. Don't you worry.
Yeah, probably will be. But it just shows you what you can do on the Isle of Man, and people that coming to live on the Isle of Man, get involved in the Isle of Man, and what they're involved in, whether they're business people or people who want to retire here and bring their families over. It just shows you what people can actually do when they get involved in charities. And the biggest thing I've got, Alex, because there's a thing, I don't know whether your Railway Society is a charity, I'm not quite sure.
The Groudle, Groudle is a registered charity. It's an entirely voluntary one, yes. Yeah.
So the same thing, there was a consultation exercise about a month ago regarding charities and so forth, regarding, what they do, should they have it's all to do with whether charities are running a business or not. I don't know where this government's getting all this information from, where they think these charities are making loads and loads of money. They're not. They're just, you'll know yourself, won't you? You get donations coming in, and it just helps you wipe your feet throughout the year.
Do you not feel, David, that when it comes to I'm in danger of straying into an area where I'll offer an opinion on this one, but it fits with a lot of the way that government and MHKs, when they vote for new legislation, it's a case of here is a problem in the minority, so we'll go and punish the majority with more regulation or more laws or anything else. And I think the last time they did that with charity regulation over here, I can tell you, as someone who does a lot of the paperwork behind the charities that I'm involved in, it's unbelievable. I do less of it at my day job than I do in my charity work, because it's almost a case of, we need to be so over-regulated and make sure that everything is good, to make sure that the minority don't get away with anything, that the majority lose out sometimes.
Yeah. You're spot on, absolutely spot on. But I can't understand where the 24 members of the Keys and then the MLCs themselves is why they're not discussing it for some of the charities, or having inviting them in to discuss, what government, what's your problems, and we'll tell you what our problems are. Is we're running out of funds. scraping the bowl to get the extra few dosh out to put things on for people of the Isle of Man. We're not money laundering. We're not doing all sorts of things that people accuse certain charities of doing anyway. Because I've been involved in one where I can't believe where the bank said it's to do with anti-money laundering. That's the thing that rolls off her tongue all the time, which I think is absolutely stupid. But anyway, I just wanted to thank Manx Radio for doing the thing, and Kell Properties. I don't know all the directors, but who they are, they're great because they've done a service to the Isle of Man, and I want to thank people for as we come up to Christmas.
And
okay?
also, David, you know, I will bang the drum of the fact that it was the brainchild of Christy DeHaven here at Manx Radio to come up with that feature. So she works very, very hard on it as well. So for them and the Kell Properties and everybody else in the charities, no, they do a very, very good job. So thank you.
Yeah, will she get a rise though?
I've given her a box of mince pies for Christmas.
That's enough. See you, mate.
Cheers, mate. Bye. Take care, David. Always lovely to hear from Quirky there. Yeah, he's got a point in terms of charities on the Isle of Man that actually, if you look at the work of lots of different charities, everything from, the heritage kind of stuff that I'm involved with when it comes to health charities, when it comes to children's charities, and the whole wide spectrum, you normally find that people who have a passion for something, they go above and beyond, which is why I suppose lots of people do find that quite refreshing in this day and age. Quickly, a few more messages. Please tell us how the airport would have got the people off the plane if there was an emergency such as a fire, heart attack, or maybe something else. Well, that's a very good point. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I suppose we'd have all gone down those inflatable slides if there had been an emergency, but good point, Will. Let's have a look. Texter 382. Hi, Alex. Nice to have you on today. Oh, thank you very much. That flight information has completely shocked me. Unbelievable and horrible for the passengers. Why didn't the airport fire service help, or large trucks to create a wind block or pull the plane next to a large hangar? Gary did point out in his message he was aware that they were going to try and move the plane to a more sheltered area, but that was declined. It's a good question. Regarding the issue at Ronaldsway Airport, there used to be the baggage handlers and airport security employed directly by the airport, but they all got made redundant to save money years ago. So I'm afraid this is what you get with companies paying the minimum wage, no shift allowance. It would be interesting to know if they did have enough staff to perform the task at hand. Yet, government went through, after the VAT bombshell, they just contracted everything. The DOI is a big prime example of that. What was the Department of Transport? Because we used to have, remember, the Zare gang used to work on roads and things. So you had gangs, and now everything is contracted out. You know, even the parking cones and the signs. You see Watling Street Services everywhere. That must be a massive government contract. That we don't even own the road signs anymore. Everything is contracted out, and it's possibly, is it a false economy? I suppose that's the point you're making there on 980. If there were enough staff on shift, we will never know. Stephen Onken says, Alex, if you watch the BBC weather forecast when there's a weather alert, the bad weather always seems to go round the island, so we don't seem to be getting bad weather. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I have to be honest that anecdotally, a lot of people do approach me and go, yeah, you should go and download the Met Office app in the UK or XC Weather because it's more accurate. And I was like, oh, thank you for that. Alan says, people are getting fed up with all the constant weather warnings. It's winter and it gets wet and windy. Thank you very much, Alan. What's the old phrase? There's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. Let's have a look. Sai says, oh, boring. Poor Gary realised that living on an island can be problematic. Always the victim, says Gary. Well, okay, Gary, I would argue that if you're wanting to make the island more attractive and people can't get on and off in wind, what's your solution? I have a big chip on my shoulder about people coming up with problems with no solutions. Kevin H says that the Ambilift, for disabled passengers returning from Freetman was out of operation for a while as well. Passengers with mobility problems were often treated in a demeaning and disrespectful manner. Sorry to hear that, Kevin. I hope you weren't one of them. And a few comments and opinions in terms of WhatsApp. Paulie says, where is that fella getting 180 people on the flight from? The maximum is 70. Okay, if the plane really had been carrying 180 people, it would have been a larger aircraft and the stairs wouldn't have reached. Okay. It isn't actually correct. The Easyjet aircraft used would have been an Airbus A319 or 320. They can seat up to about 160 people. Okay, so just to let you know on that one, Paulie. Tam in Williston says, couldn't the passengers have been deployed using the inflatable emergency chute like in a sea landing? Fun and everyone home on time. Well, I'm not going to lie, on a flippant sense, it does sound a bit of fun. And Tim has said, this situation just proves that putting incompetent people into management positions doesn't work. We all know the type. They don't actually know how to do the job, but they're very good at telling everyone else what they do. This is another topic, okay, when it comes to some officers in the civil service. You sit there thinking that number of times that politicians do their best efforts to do the best for people, and they always come up against very, very legitimate and well-spoken arguments from officers who come up with reasons you can't do that. The Sir Humphrey Appleby syndrome. And a friend of mine in government once said that government HR is the best department for ensuring that incompetent people can never be fired. Yeah, maybe does the world need to change? Thank you very much for that. And, he's been waiting patiently. Hello, Julian. How are you?
All right, Alex, how are you doing?
I'm not so bad, mate. How's things?
Oh, all right, yeah. I'm just looking. A single tunnel air bridge would cost somewhere between 1 and 2 million to integrate it into a stairwell.
Okay.
But they're spending a fortune, apparently, at the moment at the airport on electrification of the aircraft tug trucks that push back the aircraft. You'd think that it might be more of a priority to just get people off the aeroplane rather than electrifying the tugs.
I would probably argue that, yes, that is more of a priority. I can see the difficulty in terms of actual air bridges, in terms of the different types of aircraft we have, because, of course, air bridges only work on sort of larger aircraft, and I'd imagine you'd want something that was almost a one-size-fits-all, which, if you look at the comparison size between the Airbuses for Easyjet and then the smaller planes for Logan Air, I suppose there's a bit of an issue there, isn't there?
Yeah, although they do have, it can move up and down, but in general, yes, for the ATRs, it tends to be a bust over. But, interesting. An article in yesterday's Telegraph newspaper, it's titled, Banks Under Fire for Using Flawed Net Zero Study. This story should be of particular interest to anyone who uses Lloyds, NatWest, or HSBC. These banks use flawed research from the Network for Greening the Financial System, which wildly over-exaggerated climate change predictions, though this has now been retracted, but was used by the banks to lend money to net zero-focused companies to allow the bank bosses to align with net zero targets. The flawed net zero study originated from the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, and it was flagged by a team of economists as seriously wrong. It's not yet known what scale of inappropriate lending has taken place as a result of the flawed net zero study.
What consequences would you imagine come from that, Julian? Because, the banking crash of, when was it, about 2007, 2008, off the top of my head, in the UK, a lot of that was obviously investments in or over-lending into schemes and real estate that was always going to be a failed strategy. Do you feel that whilst they've lent all this money off the back of a questionable and now retracted report, do you feel that it's going to lead to bigger calamities in the financial sector?
Well, let's take Ørsted shares, for example, because, this is the type of thing that a lot of pension funds are investing in.
Yep.
They're a 12th of their value 5 years ago. So they've dropped from, in Danish kroners, it's dropped from 1,400 down to 120 odd. So if you amplify that out, if the net zero, you look at Mingyang, which is the largest wind turbine manufacturer in China, they've dropped massively. So has Vestas, so has Vattenfall, which are all these big players. It's not just one. So I don't know. If they've been lending, what's going to be the consequences of this? If they don't collapse, are they going to start lowering their interest rates on savings to try and compensate for all this silly thing? The other thing I was going to mention, to do with exaggeration, last week in Tynwald, Gary Cluett stated, and I'll quote, he made various things, but the one that caught me my attention was elevated CO2 reduces protein content by up to 65% in wheat. That's kind of a big statement to make. And I would suggest that the nutritional content of modern bread has fallen because of the push for mass-produced, rapidly fermented bread with a long shelf life.
Yeah.
And a lot of the complex proteins and fiber are now stripped away when the bran and the wheat germ are discarded in the milling process. And that's all the nutritional oils and fats that would normally go rancid and shorten the shelf life are removed. And all you've got left is what's called the endosperm, which is basically starch. And interestingly now, modern white bread, the supermarket white bread, has got a higher glycemic index of 75 compared to 65 for sugar, table sugar. And if you go back to the old ancient wheat, like einkorn, that's 35 on the glycemic index. And then you've got another factor is the modern hybridized wheat since the 50s has a very different gluten protein makeup and the gliadin structure. So that's all changed. And it became obvious that there's a much higher, in fact, in the old wheats, they don't have this peptide. And anyone who's got celiac problems will probably have heard of 33-MER, which is a peptide that gives celiac such a hard time, which are absent in the older wheat. And then you had the other bit where the bread dough used to be fermented over 24 hours. So the bacteria was breaking down the gluten structure, which of course did mean that it didn't rise like it does now. But now that bread is sort of fermented and then baked within 3 hours, you're bypassing all that critical phase just in the name of the rise time being quicker.
But in terms of, Julian, in terms of food and food production, because I hark back, I'm quite a nostalgic person. You hark back to, it's much nicer to have this level of food and the way things were done in the olden days. You could wander around like Beamish Museum and think, oh, this is much better. That the mass producing of food to the levels that you say there, and it's not just with bread, obviously. We're aware that, a lot of the nutritional value goes out of foods for either mass production or to make them last longer, or the fact that we don't really have seasonal fruits because we can just grab it from all over the world and refrigerate it for days to get to your supermarket. That has allowed us to produce far more food than we are able to produce in an old-fashioned sense. So the question is, when you've got such a sizable population of the world, are we relying on these less nutritious foods in order just to feed everybody?
Yeah, but if you go back in time, I mean, even if you just probably were to go back to Douglas more than 50 years ago, you had decentralized production everywhere. I'm sure there was probably several bakeries in Douglas, several fishmongers. So if that process had been allowed to continue, I remember, many places on the island, if you look, the bakers and the fishmongers have all disappeared. I mean, literally, you've only got Devereaux's left, more or less.
But the question is, Julian, do you shop at Tesco?
Only if I have to. But, I'm using, the local butcher as much as I can. I'm going to the health shop and trying to, go with even making my own bread and stuff, because when you look at what's been put in it, I mean, if you look at bread, if you look in the old days, it was wheat, flour, water, and a bit of yeast. You look now, you've got high fructose corn syrup, soybean oil, mono and diglycerides. You've got calcium propionate and azotic carbonamide, which is used in yoga mat and shoe rubber manufacturing, which is where you get the dough texture. So, okay, we talk about all this mass production and centralization. It's a bit like, it's also from the point of view of resilience. If you've got, say you've got multiple meat production, if there is some outbreak somewhere, at least you've got the possibility that you are isolated physically from that problem. If you end up with a huge centralized cattle ranch somewhere, I mean, look at what's going on with them culling chickens in America and stuff because of, one, or the goats in Greece. They find one example of, say, a particular kind of disease, and they cull the whole lot now, which they call stamp out. Whereas in the old days, they'd used to breed the ones that got over it, and then you would have that immunity resilience across the herd. That's all being removed now. It meant so many things now. Everything's becoming centralised, and it's I don't know. You're losing that resilience. You're losing the natural immunity, and in the name of what? Putting in all these chemicals into bread and things. Why can't we have more bakers out and about making local stuff? Look at all the Laxey flour. When that's gone, the Isle of Man is probably unique in the UK in having the old way of making that flour, because when it's gone and we don't have that ability to use that, what are we going to get? We're going to get all this multiple chemicals. So even if you make your own bread with the flour, you're going to have to be very discerning what you use to avoid all this.
Okay, Julian. I mean, that final one, Julian. I'll put to you a message that's coming from Steve, who says, "So Julian is now a master baker. I hope he wasn't doing predictive text with that one. With a Google degree in food technology, alongside all of his other Google degrees. He wants to say that why do we give you so long? Well, quite frankly, we will give anybody time on the Mannin Line, so I don't worry about that. To read out what he considers your biased internet search history. Now, do you feel that you, and there are many others who come on the Mannin Line, are good examples of what is a scientific train of confirmation biased? Which is that actually the stuff that you find out and the research you do when coming on air is naturally going to lean towards telling you what you want to hear, because the internet is so clever that it learns your natural biases and interests.
Well, let's put this into two things. And if I get so much time on the radio, why is it Steve never rings in and just does little text? Why come on and talk about it? Because I'd love him to talk with you about this.
Yep.
And you can do the probing. But the first point is, perhaps Steve shouldn't take this up with me, but the Institute of Food Technology at the University of Novi Sad in Serbia that did all these, they got all the laboratory, they did all the testing on it. Maybe he'd like to describe why it is that zinc content in modern bread is a quarter of what it used to be. Or perhaps he'd like to talk about magnesium as a half. And if you look at the overall good proteins in bread, it's dropped by 80% since the 50s. So if that's not me saying that. That's an institute in Serbia. So why you don't shoot the messenger? You know what I mean? It's like,
nope.
Please show me why it is that anybody would believe that modern white bread in a supermarket is as nutritious as bread that's made to the old standards, and you include the bran and the germ when you make it. Explain to me why I'm wrong.
No, okay, Julian. I've got someone else on the line, so I'm going to move on. But I look forward to trying. I'm looking forward to trying a piece of toast from your new homemade loaf. So there you go.
You're more than welcome.
Thanks very much. Cheers, Julian. There we go, Steve. We put your comments to Julian on that one. Right. Let's go to line 2. Oh, fantastic! It's Bonzo. Hello, Bonzo. How are you?
Well, I've got a headache after listening to that.
It's from one side to the other. But you might have been eating...
Well, I wouldn't call it from one side to the other, although I would call it perhaps from selective fact basing to actual fact basing.
Well, I'll put the same challenge to you that I put to Julian, which is that confirmation bias is a real thing, especially when searching and researching on the internet. Everyone always says, "Have you done your research?" Thinking the internet, of course, is completely unbiased and impartial. So, do you not feel that then a lot of information you see fits your beliefs and interests in the same way that it would with Julian or any other regular contributor?
Well, to a certain extent, but that of course is the algorithms. So I do take news from a wide variety of sources, and indeed not just UK sources and such. So,
and I apologise.
So it is a question of having the ability to hold opposing ideas in your head.
Yeah.
And then synthesise arguments out of those. And, well, of course, that's what I got trained to do in a previous life. So.
Okay. You did actually want to talk about air and sea services, so apologies.
Yes, aeroplanes and ships.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. We've had a lot of criticism on various things, and of course, it's easy to do. But as you were saying, some of those issues are to do with contractorization, and some of those are to do with the fact that our air services, particularly our air services with Easyjet, they are bus stop services. We do not have a base here. So if things go wrong, they're not going to come here. They're going to go back to where they need to go, and they're not going to hazard the aircraft in any way. So if there's the slightest possibility that a set of air stairs could be blown into something like the little things that stick out of the fuselage near the cockpit, which are the pitot heads and things for airspeed indication and such, the aircraft sensors, then they're not going to hazard that, because that then would take an aeroplane out for days from operation.
So the question,
likewise, going.
The question is, though, Bonzo, why don't we invest in any infrastructure that allows this to happen? Because once again, my mindset with anything is that this can't happen, and you sit there going, well, okay, we need to find a way to make sure that this can happen, as opposed to just sitting there and almost being an excuse culture of, oh, well, we couldn't do this because of this. And you go, well, actually, we want to get flights that are more reliable. There are harsher conditions around the world where regularly serviced flights operate. What do we need to do here in order to improve that, surely?
Well, perhaps take back aircraft handling back in-house rather than the false economy of contractorization. Okay. But also, I'm sure the Department of Infrastructure, on behalf of would it be infrastructure or would it be enterprise now? I'm not quite sure where airport. Although
the airport is
sits
DOI.
in infrastructure.
Yeah, it does sit in DOI. Yes.
Yeah. There's some strange things that do and don't. But part of that, DOI, of course, will come to Treasury and say, look, here's the business case for this, and Treasury will go no in their usual way. And then go, oh dear, well, why can't we get industries here? And why are people going? Because they can't get reliably from here to wherever they want to go, and then come back again. Oh, well, that's your problem. But this is another symptom of a government that isn't joined up and doesn't think towards sort of simple, necessary objectives like the vital one. And everything else about the Isle of Man depends on this: the ability to get on and off the island at a regular and predictable rate. Okay, with some allowance for the fact that we do live on an island and there's weather, but not with this sort of continual culture of delay and cancellations and stuff. That just doesn't make a viable place to do business.
Do you feel, Bonzo, off the back of your...
It's got a pretty place to live and work, but...
Off the back of your comment there, do you think that part of the problem is that all decisions seem to come right back to the pound, shilling and pence of the treasury? I mean, my late father always said, never trust an accountant and never trust anyone in business who's just obsessed with spreadsheets and numbers, because they will just drive everything into the ground by cutting. And you do get the impression that because we just don't dare invest in anything because it's always a no for the money, that they kind of just magically expect the rest of the world just to improve itself without ever spending any money.
Oh, absolutely. And this is one of the reasons why projects fail. And the larger the project, the more likely it is to fail and overrun and cost. Because if you go to Tynwald with a vote for what it actually costs, you're never going to get it through. So you have to actually present the project with a cost that Tynwald will vote through, and then you commit into the project, and then they have sunk cost, and we've got to get it finished. So you then go back for supplementary votes and vote for more money.
Okay.
But it's because there are various Tynwald members who go, oh, this is eye-watering, this is eye-watering. As I recall, one member saying in Tynwald last week, well, nobody said paying £120 million for the Isle of Man steam packet was eye-watering, even though, of course, it was immensely overvalued.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for that one, Bonzo. Lovely to speak to you as always. And I think a lot of the messages are about the contractualization issues. Thank you very much to the person who suggested I'm going to have to find this message now, who said that the problem with... Oh, here we go. Alex, you mentioned about the DOI contracting out work and not having a workforce anymore. Isn't that down to your boss at Manx Radio? Oh, here we go. No, I've got news for you. I'm Phil Gaughan's boss at Manx Radio, so it's definitely not my boss. Phil Gaughan, for his tenure as DOI Minister, maybe he could explain his own decisions. Well, Phil was the Minister for the Environment from 2011 to 2014, and DOI Minister after that. The cuts and the contractualisation came around about 2007. So obviously I don't want to let facts get involved in your good story there, but hey-ho.
The winning is well underway with Manx Radio's Christmas Countdown.
Every weekday between now and Christmas Eve, we have a huge prize under the tree that could be yours, including a £100 voucher for Keller's, a chocolate making workshop with Soral, and a luxury 2-night stay at Trail Lodge worth £400.
All you need to do is listen out for a simple seasonal question and text your answer to 166 177.
Manx Radio's Christmas Countdown, brought to you by Spectrum Windows.
Walton's for electricals. Great service, great price, and stock to go.
For everything electrical for your home, it has to be Waltons. At Waltons Electrical, we have a huge stock of ready-to-go items at incredible prices. Open Monday to Saturday, 9 till 5 on the Isle of Man Business Park, Bradham. Find us online at waltons.im and follow us on Facebook for our latest offers.
Walton's for electricals. Great service, great price, and stock to go.
How exciting! The Hospice Christmas car draw is back! This year there's a chance to win a fabulous Hyundai i10 Advance worth over £17,000. If that wasn't enough, the winner will also win £5,000 cash. Now that's what I call a Christmas present. Tickets are just £25. Visit hospice.org.im/car draw. Visit a hospice shop or call 672222. Hurry, the draw will take place on the 30th of December. Car kindly donated by Kell Properties. Ho ho ho!
Get your glow back this winter at Tracy Bell, where you'll find a range of winter offers on now. Perfect for her, for him, for couples or family and friends. Visit tracybell.co.uk and discover winter offers today. Tracy Bell, helping you to be better.
Darker days and damper conditions require more action. Make sure you carry out your vehicle safety checks this winter. Think powders. P, petrol and diesel. O, oil. W, water. D, damage. E, electrics. R, rubber. S, self.
Make sure your lights are all working too. Brought to you by Quayside Tyres in conjunction with Isle of Man Road Safety.
Merry Christmas from everyone at Skull Valley Geo.
Oh, thank you very much. Right, it's fast approaching 10 to 1. Mannin Line with Alex this afternoon, sitting in for Andy, 66 13 68. Thank you to Chris, who says, Alex, still no news on the horse tram's completion. Yeah, I had spotted that. Has it become now a symbol of a wider issue on how the civil service ignores or manipulates the will of Tynwald to their own ends? And is completely undemocratic. Should officer heads roll in the DOI to sort this out? It is interesting, yeah. I do give a huge amount of respect for the chief executives of other departments that will come to Manx Radio, Home Affairs, DFE, and things like that. The DOI, a department that's constantly under criticism for some of their actions, which could possibly be seen by some as not being very democratic or ignoring the will of our democratic leaders, and we never hear from the officers. All very, very invisible. And it goes back to my earlier point of the fact that, obviously, maybe jokingly wise, we should have an election in September for a change in the civil service and leave the MHKs there, just to see if it made any difference. Yeah, in whatever world. Right, let's go back to some of your comments. And Tam in Williston says, "Go, Julian! We want you as our leader. Bonzo boring. Join the government and give normal people peace." Sun's out in Williston. Thank you very much, Tam. Glad to know that the sun is out. Also, Andrew's been on about the latest issue at the airport. He says it just adds to another long list of ongoing problems and failures, including the ATC brakes, still causing disruption 4 years after the COVID. Not the fault of the ATC staff. That's true. Air traffic control staff. It's not their problem. They're working very hard. Purchasing new baggage scanners that operate exactly like the old ones, requiring liquids and electronics to be removed, whilst airports elsewhere are upgrading to scanners where nothing needs to be taken out. I do know from a logistics point of view that the big scanners they now have in Liverpool where you don't have to take... I think you'd have to do some major alteration works at Ronaldsway Airport to fit them in. But maybe that's what we should be planning. Operating only a Category 1 landing system with the highest approach visibility requirements in the British Isles, despite being a fog-prone coastal airport. Primary radar being frequently unserviceable. Oh, no, that's something that's interesting. I'd like to know more about that. And a senior manager who has severely damaged morale across the airport being promoted to a new role instead of being removed. Once again, this goes down to the world of government HR may be operating very different to the private sector and the real world. The list goes on, says Andrew. This is a critical lifeline service that will be seeing proper investment. Instead, the DOI seems more focused on spending money on 20-mile-an-hour signs and deciding which roads to dig up next. Okay, thank you very much, Andrew, for that one. I don't know, part of me thinks... It was mentioned a bit the weekend that if you look back over the last few general elections, there's always something quite controversial that the DOI springs on their minister in the year before an election. You know, like maybe a roundabout or resurfacing roads outside their houses. And there's an election in September, and the 20-mile-an-hour seems to have grown out of Anne Corlett coming up with a very good suggestion about 20-mile-an-hour around schools, and it seems to be now rather controversial. Yeah, someone suggested to me that was a bit of a conspiracy theory. I couldn't possibly comment. The island is a mess and needs proper leadership by experienced individuals, not just a man off the street. Or woman, of course. Thank you to Texter 557 says, why can't members of the civil service and officers be ousted is the question. There'll be an HR reason, I'm sure. The 557 says, hey, Alex, regarding MHK's performance, they need to have annual targets set, and if not met, they can be ousted. In fairness, that is the democratic process. You've already got that, really. It's not annual. It's every 5 years. If you don't feel your MHK's done their job right, if you feel that actually what was in their manifesto wasn't, I don't know, removing the vote from the bishop, and they were promising they'd sort out housing, and they've done the opposite, well, you don't vote for them this September. You kick them out and you get somebody new. That's how democracy works, I suppose. Nothing stopping Julian opening a bakery, small animal holding, butchers, fishmongers, candle makers, fabric and ribbon stall, airline and shipping company, etc. Oh, well, excellent stuff. I want a loyalty card, Julian, if you do that. What else? If I was after a sandwich, I'd go to Julian's instead of Bonzo's. Oh, my word. Well, highbrow topics today, aren't we? H has texted saying, I wonder what the reason was for declining the captain's request to park somewhere more sheltered so the steps could be deployed. And we'll follow that up, H. In fairness, I know the conspiracy answer is normally a lot more exciting possibly than the real one, but I'm sure there must have been a reason. Oh, excellent. Look at this. We have a statement from Easyjet, literally just come in now following last night's service. So this is the statement word for word from Easyjet. Due to strong winds on the Isle of Man yesterday evening, resulting in ground handling services being suspended, customers on flight EZY517 from Liverpool were unable to disembark as the weather was not expected to improve. The flight returned to Liverpool and was cancelled. The safety and well-being of our customers and crew is EasyJet's highest priority, and we did all possible to minimise the impact of the weather for our customers, providing the option to rebook or receive a refund, as well as hotel accommodation and meals for those who required them. Whilst this was outside of our control, we are very sorry, customers, for the inconvenience caused. Well, thank you very much for that. There you go. There's the statement from EasyJet. The more interesting part, I feel, is on that last line. Whilst this was outside of our control. So ground handling services were suspended. It mentions there due to the strong winds. Let's have a look. Thank you very much. Saying the election. 614 says that the election, the vast majority of the island won't be voting Deadwood back in. You say that. That's always interesting. You get to a general election and you do find that people actually go and vote with who they feel comfortable with from the last time. When actually you're sat in that little box and quite frankly, you're sitting there going, better the devil you know or not? People normally go with better the devil you know. We're out of time. The airport and bread and weather warnings. That was an afternoon and a half. Thank you very much for your company. Andy will be back tomorrow. And we didn't really even get to discuss the fact that the Chief Minister says the Manx economy struggling is more sentiment than actual evidence. The question I put to you is, isn't that what they in the business world call confidence? And surely, if there's a lack of confidence in the economy, that is a problem. Do you agree? Well, Andy will be here with the open line tomorrow from 1 for you to discuss all of that. Thank you very much to Chris Pearson on the phones this afternoon. Beth Espy is up next with 1 to 3, and I shall be back on the afternoon show tomorrow. Have a lovely Monday, whatever you're doing. And by the way, there's no weather warning. Take care, ta-da.